Have you ever had one of those days where everything seems the same? The tiring work, the exhausting routine, nothing new, nothing extraordinary. Now, imagine that in the middle of this ordinary day, something unexpected happens. Something that changes your life forever. That's exactly what happened to Marta, a dedicated waitress who worked in a small restaurant on the side of a busy highway in Arizona. She waited tables as she did every day, without imagining that that night, fate had prepared an unbelievable surprise. What if I told you that one of the biggest stars in Hollywood walked through those doors, sat at one of the tables, and, with a simple gesture, changed everything? What did he see in her that no one else did? What did he say that made Marta question everything about her own life? Get ready, because this story will move you. And before we begin, if you like inspiring stories like this, subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us to continue bringing you stories that warm the heart. Now, let's go. Marta forced a shy smile, not knowing exactly how to react. Thank you? Change the subject? Clint Eastwood wasn't just any client. He was a living piece of cinema history, someone her father idolized. But there, in that moment, he seemed just a tired, observant, perhaps even nostalgic man. She hurried to the kitchen, passing the order to the cook as she tried to calm her thoughts. Her father would have gone crazy if he knew she was serving coffee to Clint Eastwood. When she returned with a steaming cup, Clint looked at her in a way that made her feel vulnerable, but not in a bad way. It was as if he really saw her, beyond the apron, beyond the exhausting work. He calmly took the cup, took a sip, and without looking away, said, "You remind me of my father." Marta blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" Clint set the cup down on the table. He worked hard, too. He was a man of few words. But he always said that the people who carry the world on their shoulders are the ones who receive the least recognition. He tilted his head slightly, as if gauging her reaction. "I bet you know what that's like." Marta felt a lump in her throat. She knew exactly. For a moment, the noisy diner faded into the background. She wasn't just serving a famous actor. She was having a real, deep conversation with a man who understood the weight of what it was like to struggle every day. She smiled slightly, feeling an unexpected warmth in her chest. "I think I know." Clint nodded, as if he already knew the answer. Then he went back to his burger. What Marta didn't know was that night, Clint Eastwood would leave more than just a tip on the table. He would leave a reminder that sometimes the people who least expect recognition are the ones who deserve to be seen the most. And that night, Marta was seen. Marta felt a tightness in her chest. It wasn't every day that someone saw beyond her uniform, beyond the polite smile she gave to each customer. Clint's comment touched her in a way she hadn't expected. She took a step back, taking a deep breath. My father used to say something similar about hard work. He always said that the people who try the hardest are the ones who get the least applause. Clint smiled at the corner of his mouth, as if he understood exactly what she meant. Your father was a wise man. Marta nodded, but before she could respond, the kitchen bell rang. The order was ready. She hurried to get the plate, her heart still racing from the unexpected moment of connection. When she came back, she placed a burger in front of Clint and hesitated for a second before speaking. But he left too soon. He was always a fan of your movies. Clint looked up at her, a shadow of melancholy passing through his eyes. The good ones always go too soon. Marta felt a lump in her throat. She never expected to have this kind of conversation while working, much less with Clint Eastwood. He ate in silence, but not in a distant way. He seemed to absorb each moment, like someone who had seen a lot of life and learned to appreciate the simple things. As she cleaned a nearby table, Marta noticed Clint pulling something out of his pocket. He left some notes on the coffee saucer, along with a folded napkin. When he finished his meal, he stood up, adjusted his hat, and gave Marta a small wave before heading out the door, disappearing into the Arizona desert night. Marta approached the table and took the money, her eyes widening when she saw that he had left much more than the amount on the bill. A generous tip, enough to cover that month's rent. But it was when she unfolded the napkin that a shiver ran down her spine. On it were written just 4 words, "I see you, Marta." She blinked, feeling her eyes well up. For so many years, She had worked tirelessly, never expecting anyone to notice her efforts, never expecting anyone to tell her she mattered. But that night, a Hollywood legend didn't just see her. He recognized her struggle. And somehow, that made all the difference. Marta held the paper for a moment, feeling the rough texture beneath her fingers, as if she could absorb some of the strength behind those words. She reread Clint Eastwood's message, letting each sentence sink deep inside her. I know that sometimes the world can be hard on those who don't give up, but I want you to know that this doesn't go unnoticed. Keep going. You are stronger than you think. She never imagined that someone like Clint Eastwood, a legend, a man who had lived so many stories, could look at her and see something beyond the waitress in a worn apron, hurriedly taking orders between tables. But he saw it, and that made something inside her change. Marta looked around the restaurant. The customers continued eating, talking, with no idea what had just happened. The cook whistled some random tune in the kitchen. The glasses clinked as the customers toasted, and the radio played an old song in the background. The world went on as if nothing had changed. But for Marta, everything was different. She took a deep breath and put the paper in her apron pocket, feeling a lump in her throat. This wasn't just a note from a famous customer. It was a reminder that she mattered, that her effort, her daily struggles, her silent strength, all of it had value. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe fate had decided to play a little with her life that night. But one thing was certain. She would never forget that moment. And do you know what's even more curious? How many times do we pass by incredible people without realizing it? How many Marthas are there out there, invisible to the eyes of the world, but carrying on their shoulders a weight that few can imagine? Perhaps this story serves a greater purpose. To remind us all that sometimes a simple acknowledgement, a phrase, a look, a word of encouragement, can completely change someone's trajectory. And that, in the end, it's not just the great actions that make a difference in life. It's the small gestures, the right words at the right time. That night, Marta was seen. And somehow, that made all the difference. Marta stood there, with a note and a check in her hands, her heart racing and a sense of disbelief taking over her body. $10,000. An amount she never imagined she would see in her life. But it wasn't just the money that made her tremble. It was a message behind it. It was a recognition she never knew she needed so much. Tears fell without her being able to stop them. She felt as if a huge pressure was being lifted from her shoulders, as if someone, somewhere, was finally validating all her silent struggle. No strings attached. No expectations. Just a gesture. Those words echoed in her mind, like a mantra that made her question her own perception of herself. She had always believed that life was about doing what needed to be done, without caring about others. But in that moment, someone was seeing her, and somehow that made everything seem different. Marta thought about Gabriel. What could this money do for him? How much stability, how much peace of mind could she finally bring to the son she loved so much? But at the same time, there was something even deeper there. It was a feeling of being seen, of being important, of being noticed in a world where so often people go unnoticed. That was what was really changing her. In the days that followed, Marta couldn't get Clint Eastwood out of her mind. Who was that man after all? Why had he helped her so generously, without expecting anything in return? It was more than just a simple gesture of kindness. There was something she still couldn't understand. A quick search on the internet revealed more than she had imagined. Clint Eastwood, in addition to being a movie star, was also a successful businessman, known for his quiet contributions to small communities, always keeping a low profile and out of the spotlight. He didn't make a big deal about his actions, but his generosity was immense. He helped without expecting recognition. He helped from a heart. This made her question even more. Why had he chosen her? What was it about him that had made her worthy of such a great gesture? She spent hours thinking about everything that was happening, about the chance to start over. The life she thought was simple and difficult was suddenly full of possibilities. It was more than the money. It was an opportunity to truly change her story. But more important than that was knowing that, for a moment, someone had seen her struggle and respected her. As Marta reflected, Clint's smile flashed through her mind, and something in her chest warmed. He didn't need big words or promises. What he did was simple but powerful. He saw her. He recognized her. And with that, she found the strength to believe that life, no matter how hard it was, could also be full of surprises. Marta's heart was still beating fast, but now it wasn't just because of surprise or because of Clint's generosity. It was a new feeling that was growing inside her, a feeling of power, not the power to change the world all at once, but the power to make a difference in a simple and genuine way. She already knew, deep down, that what Clint represented wasn't fame or money. He represented a much deeper idea, the ability of a simple act of kindness to transform someone's life, like he had done with her, like he had done when he looked beyond the surface, when he saw the silent struggle, the hidden weariness in her eyes, and instead of ignoring it, he decided to do something. As she continued her research, Marta was even more surprised. It wasn't the first time he had helped someone without asking for anything in return. Small business owners, cafe owners, librarians from forgotten communities. They all shared stories of unexpected encounters with Clint. Some said he would show up unannounced, do something simple but meaningful, and then, without ceremony, disappear. For him, helping seemed to be a philosophy of life. He didn't need applause. He was there to help, because he believed in the power of simple gestures. This had a profound impact on Marta. She understood then that change didn't have to come from grand gestures or powerful people. Sometimes, the greatest transformations came from something subtle, from a caring look, from an act of unpretentious generosity. What Clint did for her was more than just financial help. He made her believe that even an ordinary person could make a difference. That instead of waiting for miracles, maybe it was time to be one for someone else. She spent that night reflecting. She thought about the overdue bills that still weighed on her shoulders, about Gabriel's worn-out shoes that he insisted on wearing. Even though they were almost torn, about the old car that seemed closer to breaking down every day. But what had the most impact on her, what had made her rethink her life, was what Clint had said, "People like you deserve to be seen." Those words echoed in her mind. And then Marta made a decision. The next day, she went to the bank. She deposited the check, and as she walked out, she felt a strange but powerful feeling. It was like a new chapter was beginning. But more than that, she felt like this money wasn't just for her. She had been seen, but now it was time to do something with what she had received. It was time to help other people be seen, too. She enrolled in a technical course in administration, something she had always wanted to do, but never had the means to do. She knew it wouldn't be easy, that the work routine would still be demanding, but she finally felt she could create something more for herself and her son. A different future, a better future. But Marta didn't stop there. She took part of the money and created a support fund for single mothers in the region, mothers like her, who struggled every day to survive, who went unnoticed in the rush of life, without ever receiving recognition. She wanted to ensure that other women, in similar situations, could also be seen, helped, and supported. Clint's gesture had changed her life irrevocably, and now Marta was determined to change the lives of others. She knew that, often, a simple gesture could transform lives. She was proof of that, and now she wanted to be the starting point for other women, other mothers, to also find a way to be seen, to be recognized. Small gestures, big transformations. Marta looked at Gabriel as he played in the garden. He was growing up so fast, and she knew that this money was not only an opportunity for her, but a promise for his future as well. She now had the tools to build a better path for both of them. And so the change began, and she knew that the impact of it all was only beginning. Weeks later, as Marta balanced her work and studies, Gabriel, with a curious and innocent look of someone who still believed in magic, asked, "Mommy, do you think that man will come back?" Marta smiled, feeling a lightness in her heart. She ruffled Gabriel's hair, that simple gesture she always did when she felt the weight of life lighten. "Maybe, but even if he doesn't come back, he will always be part of our story." He reminded us that even in the most difficult times, kindness can appear in unexpected ways. And with that certainty, Marta moved forward, determined to make her own impact on the world, one small gesture at a time. She knew that while Clint Eastwood had been an important part of that turnaround, the real power to change her life came from within, and that was just the beginning. This story shows us that a simple act of kindness can transform an entire life. Often, we are so caught up in the difficulties of everyday life that we forget that we can be agents of change. We don't need to be millionaires or famous to make a difference. All we need is a caring eye and a willing heart to help. And if each of us were willing to practice a genuine act of kindness, just imagine how much more welcoming and better the world could become for everyone. If you like this story and feel that it touched something deep inside you, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. This helps us to continue bringing more stories that can inspire and transform other people's lives, just like yours. Until next time, and remember, every act of kindness counts.